joined by Dani Peterson. You and I connected when I was looking for more partner support, and you and I got on the discussion of the difficulties of communication after betrayal. It is without question the thing that disrupts the home the most. I mean, it's one thing to have the betrayal, and then now you have this recurring, the beginning, multiple times a day, right? But even a year in, it's still far from gone. I mean, it's painful conversation after painful conversation. And if you don't know how to have those conversations, oh boy, after a while, somebody usually starts to get some quit in them. And when they start to get that quit, it gets really tough. I mean, it's hard enough to make it through this. If somebody starts getting 1 foot in, 1 foot out, oh my gosh, it's almost impossible at that point. And so the purpose of this is I'd really love to talk about what are those things that you and I have learned through communication, through, personal experience and professional training, and how we can help other couples not get that quit. I mean, you really do. You need to fight in a good way, fighting for the relationship, not fighting with your partner. And you need hope. You've got to have both feet in. You've got to be fighting and advocating for the rectification of this. You guys have got to stop being enemies, but it's hard in this dynamic. So I think that's where I like to first start, is just to frame, a lot of the listeners are already going to know this, but I want to reframe it. Dani, can you talk to me about the story? Like, what are some of the stories the partner's saying to herself that makes communication so challenging? I want the guys to really understand what they think they're dealing with every single day, because, as the guys, we don't have to live with the same level of pain. Can you kind of paint a picture of what it's like to be a betrayed partner?
Well, speaking from my own experience and then just the clients that I've personally seen, there's a common thread in it reveals insecurities. That's what comes up for partners, and the fear and the uncertainty and what this all means. And they question their own self-worth, their own femininity, and it's just confusing from the get-go and surprising. I will see either partners who are they go so numb and they take it to heart like it's something about them. And then I see the other side where the partner, understandably and rightfully so, has a lot of anger that comes up, which underneath there's a lot of fear too. But that anger is very volatile at times and can come out very accusatory, blaming, shaming, criticizing. And it's not uncommon. I'm not saying that's the best way to communicate, but those are emotions that are rising up, and that's how it's coming out. And so I'll see those two sides reflected, and it just depends on people's background, upbringing, experience, up to date. Some couples never were really good at communicating, and so this just makes it worse. Some maybe had communicating abilities, but now they're wondering, I thought we were doing so well. I thought we could communicate and talk about anything. What's up? And so there's shock initially. So that's kind of what I see. I personally, when I found out the totality of it, when it got to the end point, I actually felt a lot of relief because there was a lot of gaslighting. There was a lot of deception and hidden secrets, things done that I could sense but couldn't pinpoint. So though I was pissed, if I can say that, right, I also felt at the same time relief because I knew there was something wrong. And so I had to find my way through all of that. And partners, they vary, and they're having to find their way out. And communicating is going to be the way to do that. It's just in the beginning, there's so much pain and so much hurt. It's going to be messy. And that's what I think both the husband or the betrayer and the one betrayed have to realize. It's not going to be nice and easy peasy and clean. It comes with its own struggle.
Yeah, it's I appreciate what you brought up about the partners all being different, because what guys need to understand is when you introduce this to the relationship, you're not going to get the same response as if you did this to another woman or a different woman or another wife or what. You're going to get a very different response because of the story that they make up about it. The ones that I hear that are most common are, oh, if I was just more attractive, he wouldn't have done this. Oh, he's bored. I'm bad in bed, and these other women are better in bed than I am. I'm too old. I'm too wrinkly. He's not into my body anymore. I've gained too much weight. The list goes on. It's this men are all pigs. Oh, I hate. This world is. They're living with these new beliefs that our actions have now introduced to their world that weren't there. I mean, I remember, and you probably remember this, Danny. There were so many times when my wife was mad, not at me, just mad that she now believes these stupid things that she doesn't want to believe. And she was mad. She was so mad that she looked at guys, and her first thought is, I wonder if he's a sex addict,
Yeah.
rather than just letting him be a guy, right? Giving him the benefit of the doubt and assuming that he has a hidden deceptive sexual behaviors that he's hiding, right? So I'm glad we kind of brought that up, because I think if we're going to go into this topic of communication, I think it's poorly informed to ignore who you're talking to. Because if you're talking to someone who a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of their parts believe that you wouldn't have done this if she was more attractive, right? If she was better in bed, if she had, was 10 pounds lighter, if she just had a couple surgeries to tighten things up, that this wouldn't have happened. That's her reality. Now, a lot of the guys will say, oh my gosh, this had nothing to do, this has nothing to do with your physical appearance. But again, that's not her story, right?
Yeah.
You got to keep in mind, guys are sold, successful men are sold, get money, get attractive women to like you, and that's a successful life. Women are sold, become the trophy that all men want. I mean, these are the differences in the two messages. So what these guys have to understand is, well, we were groomed to become as successful and sophisticated and as good looking as possible to get as many women to want to be with us. They were groomed to get successful, attractive, desirable men to attract to them. So you can see this dynamic when you go and betray them. It's so personal. So let's get into the communication aspect. But I want all the listeners to understand what we just talked about. That's the belief systems of these partners. So when she's, calling you names, and it's because she is potentially in one of these stuck places where she actually hates herself, not you. Does that make sense? And so that's, and then the same vice versa for the guy. Now she calls you a name or says, how can I trust you? And then you tell yourself a story about, oh, I can't believe I'm a guy that's wife doesn't trust. Like, these are all painful stories, Danny. And I think I know that is why the communication is difficult. Is one party hears them being accused of being something that they don't want to be, and the other party is being looped into something that they don't want to be. It's a very tough dynamic. So let's spend the rest of our time today hashing out how couples can navigate this, because I'm glad we started where we started, because I think everyone needs to appreciate this is like level 10. This is like level 10 out of 10 self-awareness, social awareness, couples therapy work we're talking about. I mean, this is not for an amateur. I mean, this is, if you are married and you guys are recovering from this, and you're not doing anything and everything you can to become masters of intimacy, relationships, communications, emotional intelligence, you better learn, because it's going to require that level of skill set. So let's dive into the communication aspect. Danny, where do you start? So let's say you have somebody, they're still either in the crisis phase or kind of toward the tail end of the crisis phase. Oh my gosh, what advice can you give them? I mean, that phase is so brutal. Where do you start with trying to introduce some peace in a very non-peaceful time?
So are you referring what I provide for
Yeah,
the
I mean,
wife, or
for the wife. Well, both. I mean, what would you say? I mean, what would you say? You can kind of separate it if it's easier. What would you say to the
yeah,
woman, and what would you say? What would you say to the betrayed, and what would you say to the cheater?
yeah. Well, the first phase has everything to do with feeling safe and secure, which you don't early on. And so everybody moves through that stage so differently. And what I'm working with the partner is being able to create some healthy boundaries, which are not barriers and they're not demands. That's a first and a given, because I think what some betrayers are faced with are what they're being told are boundaries, and they actually aren't. So I do a lot of work with the women on establishing what those boundaries look like, because those boundaries are meant to keep us safe. It's like, if you continue to do X, Y, and Z, or if you don't do this, this is what I'm going to do. And if we, as the women, are telling them, you have to do X, Y, and Z, that is no longer a boundary. And so that is one issue that I like to address with the woman. But then also for the man, just for simplicity's sake, because obviously relationships vary, um, to listen, to listen to what's underneath the words. Both have to do that. What's actually what's actually mattering right now? Because it's never what we think it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's, the problem isn't what we think the problem is. And so either a need was not met in some form or fashion, and ultimately we're responsible for our own thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and it's up to me to have those needs met. And I can request the other person help to meet them, but because we're autonomous, we have
Mm-hmm.
choice. And so with a couple who's really wanting to rebuild and restore, there's a lot of attention given to, can I be kind in this moment when I feel like punching a wall
Mm-hmm.
or slapping the face? It's like, how can I show up and be present in this moment? Because obviously, for the woman, especially for ones that have gone through disclosure, you can't unknow a lot of those stories. And like you said, we have these stories, we have a narrative, and our narratives may be true and may not be true. So, whoever is listening is to kind of get to the heart of the matter. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what matters most. So, that's kind of what I work with, like at that beginning stage, is to really help them establish an environment of safety and security. And how do we do that? We have to talk about it. This is what helps me feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
Betrayer, husband, boyfriend, is this something you're able to help do? And if they're truly wanting to help the partner, then it would be, yes, I can do that. Or, no, I can't do that, but I can do this. Would that work? It's this open dialogue
Mm-hmm.
throughout. And so, easier said than done,
Mm-hmm.
especially when we have heightened emotions. When we're unregulated, it's difficult to put into words what we really want to say. And so that's where the patience comes in, is to continue to ask those questions, not from an accusatory way, not from a shaming way, but it's like, you're really hurting right now. What would make this better?
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know? Now, wives will usually say, well, you should just know,
Yeah.
right? And we were fed that lie. Thank you, Disney, and all the other romance movies out there. And so we have to be able to know what we need and what we want and what will help us. And we want to learn how to articulate that so
Mm-hmm.
that the the man can understand what is expected or desired or wanted, and vice versa. The husband a lot of times go like stone walls and gets really quiet, but that's like a trauma response. And so it's like, I'm noticing you're shutting down. How do I keep this
Mm-hmm.
conversation going? What will make it easier for you to stay engaged with me?
Yeah. Well, and that's, that I call kind of like phase two, is that where you're going now, which we'll go there in a second. I just wanted to recap phase one. So, because I agree with everything that you said. The phase one really isn't about healthy communication as much as it's about boundaries
Yeah,
and
safely.
and and learning how to do that dance. So I'm going to empathize with both sides, right? So for the women, your biggest thing is going to be understanding what a boundary really is and what you can actually ask another human being to do. Mel Robbins just wrote this book, The Let Them Theory, right? And it's popular. It's all over social media. Yeah. And I'm a counterculture person. So if something gets popular, then there's this part of me that refuses to participate. But my wife bought it and we listened to it in the car yesterday on our way to Phoenix. And one of the things she said was really interesting. When she has this chapter about, oh, your husband's overweight and you want him to get off the couch and lose some weight. And it was literally using Harvard-based neuroscience that the more she tries to tell him what she wants him to do, and this isn't just your husband, women do this too, that our biology is to not do it. We do not want to be told what to do. We want it to be our decision, right? So I think phase one, that's the challenge is, oh, I've been betrayed. Screw you. I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to leave you. I'm going to take the kids. I'm going to take all the money. You need to do as I say. That's not boundaries, right? So boundaries, doing that dance is tough because you've been treated poorly in the worst way. I think the worst way possible, man. I put it, this sounds crazy to compare it to genocide, but I really do. I mean, I think betraying your wife is one of the ugliest things that exists in this planet. I mean, it violates so many things that should never be violated. It's so ugly. So I get that, but that is the challenge, is understanding the difference between a realistic, healthy human boundary with your husband who loves you, who you love, and a demand that you just feel like you get to say, right? Now, I want to empathize with the guys on this too, because it's tough in this phase. Oh my gosh, you're being called names. You're being asked to do very humiliating things. I mean, I remember going to my first group with a bunch of sex addicts, and oh my gosh, I was just mortified. Really, my life has come to, I remember sitting in that room thinking, wow, my life has come to this point. I'm here sitting in a room with a bunch of guys who can't control our sexual behavior. I'm one of these guys, right? So you're in this just horrible environment. And here you are having some pretty tough boundaries set sometimes. You're being told you can't go to certain things that you used to go to. Maybe your work travel is being disrupted because of this, which is extremely, extremely common. It probably happens to most all men. But I kind of want to empathize with both parties in that first stage. Is the key really is learning how to do that dance while honoring humanity and sound psychology. You don't just get to reach into your boundary bag and pull something out and ask him to do that. You can, but don't expect it to necessarily go well. I think both parties have to figure out a healthy, sustainable way to do that dance. I mean, if the goal is to stay married, you can't just pull boundaries out of your boundary bag and throw them at him and say, you need to do this because you cheated on me. But then vice versa, I think guys need to also understand that she has every right to say, I don't want you traveling for work because you've acted out on work travel. And if you're going to keep traveling, then we might have to talk about this not working. I mean, and women have every right to say, I'll say this, and I'd love for you to speak to this because I think this quote was beautiful. Oh my gosh, Michelle May said this. I loved it. She said, somebody asked her when, it was my wife, I think. My wife asked her when we could add work travel back. And because, there's, a lot of these guys are like, hey, when's this going to happen? I loved her answer. When your nervous system can handle it. So when he goes and you're not going to freak out, have panic, you're calling him, checking him, when you can live a normal, healthy life while he's out of town and you can use your tools and keep your mental health together. Okay. Then it's all right, let's talk about how we can try to make this work. But I liked that measure because it's I don't think guys just have the right to go and violate all of these boundaries while she has to suffer worse and worse and worse. So before we go into phase 2 communication, anything you want to say on some of that? Because I liked that definition because, guys need to understand nervous system and PTSD is a very real thing, and you can't just ask her to suffer because you want to violate all of her boundaries. That's I don't think that's also right either. So I think both. I think it's a tough dance. Yeah, it is. It's a tough dance, without question. I've seen every relationship has to struggle with this dance. Did I miss anything on that?
No, I mean, it's just, I think for the one who's betrayed, it's like you've been untrustworthy. And then to now expect somebody to trust you,
Mm-hmm.
like there needs to be a reality check there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, the work environment one is a difficult one too, especially if there's traveling. At the same time, it's like these were the choices that you made,
Mm-hmm.
and these are some of the
Mm-hmm.
consequences to that. And yeah, it sucks. Yeah, it's hard. And it now sucks for me
Yeah.
knowing when you were away, you were doing whatever you were doing, and it wasn't with me. And you were having lunch with other people and talking with other women and sleeping with other women and doing other things that are not mentionable. And so that's where it's interesting to me where, and see, early on too, we're also we're dealing with sobriety and recovery. So a lot of times, like, and they're two different
Right.
things, right? So sobriety is just trying to stop the behavior, but we're not dealing with the underlying current, like, the issue underneath it. So it is going to feel very restrictive, I
Mm-hmm.
believe, in the beginning. And I mean, that's just kind of par for the
Yeah, I was
course.
gonna say, what you gonna do? Like, that because and you said it so well, and that's what guys need to remember is like you you aren't trustworthy. If those of you that have teenage children, it's a really similar dynamic. I love you. I don't trust you. You sneak out. You go places that you're not. And it's this really challenging environment of like, I love you so much, but I don't believe a word out of your mouth because you've lied to your mom and I over and over and over and over and over. So I have to spy on you. You've done this to yourself. And so I try to remind these guys that's what we're dealing with. It has nothing to do with them loving you or not loving you or thinking less of you. It's similar to raising a teenager who has repetitively lied about their whereabouts and what they're doing. You have to spy on them because they have just proven time and time again that they don't tell you the truth. And it's a hard, I'll speak to it because I can't. Work travel was, I'm a keynote speaker. Like that was part of and I couldn't do my job. So I empathize with you guys, but I'm just going to say I'm on your wife's side. I mean, if I was doing those things on those trips, you guys have got to understand she has the right to say, well, if we're going to stay together, that ain't happening. Not at least for now. Right. And she
Oh,
has
yeah.
that right. And then I think what you guys have to understand is you also have the right to leave. You don't have to stay with her. If you wanna pick work and your work's travel over your wife, then that's okay. You can do that. You
Yeah.
can just tell her,
Everybody
say,
has
hey,
choice.
yep,
Everybody
exactly.
has
Hmm.
the ability to choose, which usually when you're in this type of environment, you're not wanting to make big, huge choices like I'm done, I'm over, because you're in a
Oh yeah,
reactive
a lot
state, and so
changes in a
you're not
year and a half.
thinking
Yeah.
through all of that.
Oh
But
yeah,
yeah,
I always tell everybody divorcing inside of that first year and a half is a mistake.
no,
You're not. It's so far from reality that I don't recommend couples do that.
yeah, but it's going to take time, and it's going to take a lot of patience. For the one who continues to act out, I mean, that's a whole different deal. And I know
Right.
Mel Robbins in that book says there's a difference between like teenagers because like we're fully responsible for
Hmm.
them, but with another adult, it's a different ball game.
Correct.
And so again, we would be speaking to our own core values. I have a need for honesty. That's one of my core values. Being trustworthy, um, authentic. All of those things are important to me. And when somebody kind of like bumps up against that and their behavior is showing me other than what they said initially, it's like I have to deal with that. It's
Hmm.
like, is that okay with me? And if not, what are we going to need to do here? And it may mean not traveling. It's like you might need to travel
Hmm.
local. You might need to speak more in your neighborhood. And maybe the wife comes along if
Hmm.
that's feasible. If there's kids around, that doesn't necessarily work. But there's always strategies around things. If both people really want this to work, you'll find ways
Yeah,
to make it.
and that's why I said it's a difficult dance. And, Danny and I are not claiming this is an easy dance.
No,
It's difficult. I know people who have had to change careers. There's a lot of firefighters and pilots out there who
lot.
their work schedule is just time and time again proves to be disruptive. And so I've seen people walk away from retirement packages that were like, I mean, it's just, there's always, it's not a fun dance. And to your point, I empathize with the guys who are walking away from a career they've worked their whole lives for. I feel that, and that sucks.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you got to come down, here's the tiebreaker for me very often is I go back to, why is this happening?
Right.
Because
That's
of me.
the address.
And
Yeah.
so I think that's what we always have to come back for is, did she have a problem with your work travel before she found out that you were cheating on her? Right. Like that's the thing is, I mean, this is only happening because of what you did. And so, yeah, you have to make a judgment call there when you guys are just discovering the boundaries. But I would ask both parties. I would ask the women to honor humanity. Just remember, you're asking a human being with hopes and dreams and aspirations to do these things. And so I'd ask the ladies, I get it. I get what they did. It's horrific. But keep in mind, we can't dehumanize this other individual too much because then we'll run into capacity issues in the future. Guys, there is a very real wall that they will hit at that year and a half, 2 year mark where at a certain point they start to ask themselves like, ugh, like, is this going to be the rest of my life? Like, I'm not sure if I want this. So I think both partners, we need to do that dance carefully, and neither one of you get to have it your way. You have to put it out there and love each other. I mean, this isn't a fight. This is about, how do I feel the feelings that I want to feel? And the woman wants to feel safe, and the guy wants to still be able to do his work and the things that he loves to do. So what do we do about that? And then it's a dance, and there's going to be winners and losers. I mean, that's the unfortunate part, and that's not the intention of boundaries. The intention is just to try to find some degree of a happy medium here. And, to your point, Danny, she is going to need the edge in some of these areas. I mean, it's so many guys try to advocate for some really scary things really early. And, what I would say to the guys in that situation is careful with her nervous system. I mean, she's at her limit here. So let's just let's ask for as little as we need to ask for from her, because she's redlining at this point. I mean, when they find this out, guys, I mean, we'll never know the pain, and so we got to be careful there. So let's talk base.
I was going
Go
to
for it.
ask you, I'm just kind of curious. So, like, what kind of things would they be asking of the partner?
So my guys, a lot of the guys listening to my show and in my groups, I mean, work travel is a thing for sure. And even if it's not a huge thing, it's always some dynamic, right? And if it's not work travel, sometimes it's socializing. The thing when you climb the ladder and work and really start getting into like the inner workings of making money, it's a lot of relationships. That's where a lot of money is. So a lot of the guys in my groups, there is a lot of relationship building. And so that's very unsettling for the partner sometimes when it's like, I mean, there's a lot of like some of my highest paid clients in my program, the wealthiest guys in my program, their whole job is just to kiss ass, make friends, go out to dinner, golf with people. I mean, that's their whole life and business is making relationships. That's the entire essence of the business. And so a lot of what they're asking is tough. I mean, it's a lot of travel. It's a lot of entertaining. There's women around quite often and a lot of that entertaining. And so, it's just, you're really asking for a very tough situation for her nervous system. It's really tough. And so I think that's all I meant was, honor what you're asking. Because I mean, you're asking her to struggle. I mean, that's really what you're asking her to do.
Yeah, and I think, those kinds of jobs you can do with integrity and character. It's a
Correct.
choice.
Correct.
But if you've got these underlying issues that have never been addressed, you don't know that. And so, sometimes, like you say, you have a high price to pay, and it might mean changing a job for firefighters and police.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the stress of just being the cop or the firefighter. Is it worth you losing your soul and your family over it?
Right.
And so, yeah, the money's good. At what cost? And same with the executive. people as well, it's like, can you make the shifts? Can you do the work to be able to do what you love with integrity? And that doesn't change overnight, especially if you've had these compulsive
Mm-hmm.
behaviors and you're not sure why. Like all that stuff has to get dealt with. And for the wife, it's like, I think just I would say to her, just be honest, keep it real, keep it about you. If you're feeling afraid, what are you afraid of? What's your worst case scenario? What do you need to feel safe right now? What's your ask, or what can you guys as a we figure out how to
Mm-hmm.
do? Early on, this is difficult, which is why you probably need other
Mm-hmm.
professionals to walk alongside you, because emotions can get, they can run awry, you know, and once one starts to go off, it triggers the other person because of mirroring,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, we need to have at least one person that's able to keep their feet on the ground, but that's not always possible.
Yeah, it's not. And I think before we go into kind of phase two communication, the last thing I'd say there is just, guys, you got to understand there's not a whole lot of rational thought that's going on. When they're this activated and this traumatized, you might say, hey, honey, how could anything happen? I have this here. I have this. You have access to this and this and this. There's no way I could cheat on you. That's not necessarily where these partners are at. There's not a whole lot of rational thought. It's just, you're gone. I don't care. Like, you're gone. You hid this from me for all these years. I'm sure if you really wanted to, you would find a way. You'd leave your phone somewhere. You'd say this and then go do, like, that's the thing, is like, you're going to logic their way into this trauma. And there's just not a lot of logic in that. And
Mhm.
so that's what I'd say is, guys, like, just keep in mind, they know too. My wife always told me, she's like, I'm acting like a crazy person. She knew, but that didn't change her ability to stop acting crazy. I mean, it's
Oh
trauma
no.
is not in her control. So let's talk about phase two. So phase two, the way I define it, Danny, and maybe you define it different. So phase one, you guys don't have a relationship. I mean, phase one, she's really in this, like, one foot in, one foot out. Do I want to be with this guy at all? Do I trust him to actually recover? I mean, phase one's yucky. I mean, that's the reason she can call you all the names that she's probably going to call you is, to her, like, you're not in a relationship because you violated your vows. You did things that you were never supposed to do. You hurt her worse than anyone probably will ever hurt her, right? So you got to appreciate phase one. I mean, it really is like, gosh, do I even want to be with a guy like this, right? And you can appreciate them wrestling with that, especially with, to your point, Danny, like you said, the fairy tale that's sold to them about how life's going to go on the Disney movies and the Notebook and it's just, people have childhood trauma and different things that
Yeah.
go on in their lives, and life's just hard. And so it's not like that. So, she's struggling with her life not being that way. I mean, it's tough. She always wanted it that way. Likely, if you're a high achiever and entrepreneur, she actually thought you were going to be the one who could get the closest to the perfect life. And then here you were, and it ended up being the complete opposite. She's probably like, oh my gosh, I wish I got with that, that other guy. Like, at least he wouldn't have cheated on me. Right. So phase two is different, right? So phase two, I define it as things are far from resolved. I usually say phase two kicks in, if you're lucky, a year, and that's if the guy did everything right, which they never do. So, so usually phase two starts. I usually say it right around that, like, year and a half mark. Somewhere between month 13, 15, and month 20, where it's like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna commit to this. I want to be with him. I think he can actually change. I think he knows why this happens, and I think we're on the same page. I really do think that he wishes that he could undo this, and I believe him that he doesn't want any of this to ever happen again. So that's kind of how I call phase two. Is it's like, all right, I'll give this a shot. Now you're a couple again. So that's kind of cool because it opens the doors to communications. Now, I don't know what your experience was, Danny. Oh my gosh, mine, or what you've seen with clients. Phase two is, and I know guys don't want to hear this because there's a lot of guys listening who are in phase one. Phase two for me, Danny, was just as hard, if not harder than phase one. I think in phase one was easier, because it was like, this lady's imploding, and I felt so bad because it was my fault. that I actually found phase one easier because it was like, you know what? I am a monster. You can call me that if you want. Like, oh my gosh, like I accepted the name calling. Phase two was tough because I was tired of being called names. This is my wife. I want to be married again. I want to have a relationship, like a loving one, like we used to have. And so phase two was sucked because it's like we're having a lot of really painful conversations, but it almost hurt worse, Danny, because we were both committed to each other again. And now the pain, I mean, it stung a lot. And I found we were actually having more communication issues in phase two because we were actually communicating rather than drawing lines and throwing stones. So talk to me about phase two. How is this? You mentioned like kind of like the EFT kind of philosophy, right? How do we have conversations about what's actually going on, not what you hear or think is going on? What's the advice that you give there? Because getting down to the core of it's hard to do without a therapist involved. It's very difficult to do on your own as a couple.
Yeah. Well, our phase two it kind of involves this grieving and mourning
Yeah,
stage
yeah, I like
too,
that. Hmm.
because you've a bomb went off and we're having to reestablish safety and stability, and then we're moving into this other place where, you know, say the husband is doing all the things and going to the meetings and seeing the therapist, and she's in a group, and she's seeing her own coach or therapist as well, and they're desiring to kind of come back. What This is what I tell people: you're creating something new.
Hmm.
And what is it that you want to create? Because you can't go back to what you had, because what you had was toxic. There was an illusion of things being a certain way, but the reality revealed something different. And so it becomes an opportunity. And these stages and the length of time vary because it depends on how committed people are. People like say 3 to 5 years. Well, like I went through all of my stuff throughout a first marriage, was married 20 years, and then was in recovery for many, many years. And there's varying levels and
Hmm.
layers that we're having to process. No, it's not as hard as it was at the very beginning stages. That marriage did not work, unfortunately. But, you know, you get to wherever you're at, and where you at is where you are. And
Hmm.
that's what we're having to deal with. Where are we now? Like the State of the Union address, like this is where I'm at. This is where I'm still struggling. This is where I felt like I'm doing really well. And I think it was Simon Sinek where he talks about, instead of like, you know, saying what the other person's doing wrong, still tell them what they're doing right. And
Hmm.
you say what you're not doing well.
I like that.
And I thought, well, that was an interesting little shift because, we've got these shadow sides, and we have to acknowledge those parts of us. Like, I would never do this. I could not ever be like that or say that or do that or show up in that kind of seedy place. And yet it's like, mm, maybe not like that, but the spirit in it, the energy in it is something we have to look at. And so that mourning and grief stage is looking at like, wow, what I thought I had, and it wasn't all crap, right? I had to look at some of the, my family had good moments. And then there was a lot else that was going on. So I
Hmm.
had to look at all of that. And I had to grieve that. And I still grieve some of that, just years later on a different plane that I'm on.
Hmm.
And for the couple, I would just say, again, you're doing check-ins, and those can be mundane and tedious at times because it's like remote,
Yep.
just saying the same thing over and over again. And so it's like we go a little bit deeper, really like what's on your mind, what's on your heart, what's alive in you today. What did you pick up in your session? Now, early on, the wives like wanted to know, like, what are you doing? What did you learn? Because if you didn't learn what I think you should be learning,
Hmm.
right, that becomes a struggle, and it's difficult for the husband. But there's a point in time where some of the let them theory comes into play when there's not acting out.
Hmm.
If it's still acting out, like
Right.
that's a whole different ball game. But if there's evidence and consistency and things are being congruent, that's where you're starting to like come back together. And it does take a lot of um, attunement, right, and awareness. staying in present moment is a huge thing, because we have a tendency as partners to go backwards. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, but this reminds me of this, and that happens. And that's the nervous system. That's what we, that's how that works. And it's brutal and it's awful. And you wake up ruminating. And for the male, it's like, oh my God, I wonder what that's like for you. Like, I can't imagine not getting a full 8 hours of sleep. Like, you're waking up still thinking about this, and that. Like just even having empathy for that without having to fix her or justify, or I've been doing all these things, It's like, this is where the rubber meets the road in this phase here, because it's like, can we continue to grow
Mm-hmm.
in this way? And unfortunately, none of us learn this in school. Like, could you imagine, Roland, like learning solid communication skills early on and how that would affect everybody? But none of us had that. We didn't have it modeled. And so I also see this as a great opportunity to create something great if we're willing to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to take both people, particularly in that second stage,
Mm-hmm.
because that's where some of the relapses happen too, you know.
Well, the grief phase, yeah. I mean, the grief phase wears off at month eight. All guys are like, "Oh, I'm sober," and then the grief phase wears off, and you're less sober than you thought. and it happens. I mean, it's so common that it's written in pretty much every text about sex addiction recovery. Is when the grief keeps you sober because you're terrified about your life leaving you. But yeah, once that grief goes away, and that's the challenge, I think, like you said, with phase two. Phase two, the crisis is kind of what seems to have passed. You're starting to say, oh, she's not going to leave me. Actually, the whole first phase is like, oh my gosh, she's going to leave me. She's going to leave me. She's going to leave me. I need to be on my best behavior. But yeah, once she recommits, and you feel that, you'll feel it in your body, the recommitment. To your point, yeah, slips and relapses do happen in that stage. But but I'm curious, what do you like, Dani, when you're, because it's phase two is a different phase, because now we're trying to do recovery together, but we're far from over it. I mean, the addict is still figuring out. I mean, because this is a process addiction and not really a sex addiction, the addict's still trying to figure out what are these problematic thought processes that I'm addicted to, and how am I going to sub them out? Because I think that, that's the challenge, is like, as long as these other things, as long as your brain likes those better than the alternatives, it's going to keep telling you to go do those things. I mean, the process of selling your brain on superior substitutes is, it's not as easy as everyone would like to make it sound. And meanwhile, your wife's over here on this other side. She's trying. She really, phase two is kind of cool, because your wife's really like, I need to figure a lot of this out for me. Like, she understands like a lot of the stuff that she thinks is not healthy, and she knows that. But again, it doesn't take the pain away from both partners, right? I find phase two is full of the guy's sick of being judged and labeled for activities that he has proven he wants out of his life. And then she's over here getting judged by her husband for, again, they try, we try not to, but we do approach these situations with fix it energy. And so, which is not what she's asking. She's
No.
saying, I believe these beliefs and I hate them. And that's what I think guys need to understand is, yeah, she hates him, you hate him, you both hate him. But to me, Mark, I'd be curious to your thought. What I usually tell people about phase two, if I have to like keep it really short and sweet, I usually say, you guys are fighting the same enemy finally. Phase one, you're not. Phase one, she's trying, she's trying to fight the urge to leave you. You're trying to keep her to stay. So you guys are kind of doing two different things, and they kind of work harmoniously, right? You're fighting for her and the relationship, which I'm sure she appreciates, even though she's calling you names. But then she's still kind of doing a similar fight. Like, is this something? So I think phase two is almost harder, because it looks harder, but I think it shouldn't be, because you guys actually have a common enemy. You guys have the addictive behaviors and the trauma that it caused. You guys should be on the same team. Dani, why is that so hard though? Because I'll tell you what, when I see couples in phase two, they don't look like they're on the same team quite yet. What kind of tools can we do to get there?
Well, I like what you're saying. It's like, if we can put in the middle the actual issue and the problem, and we have the individuals on the outside, like we don't vilify each other, right? The problem is when we take everything personal.
Yeah.
And yes, it's personal because it's relational, and yet a lot of it's not. And if we can see it as this is somebody who's struggling with their own inner demons or whatever it is, and whether it's the compulsive behaviors due to wanting to climb the ladder and be seen as successful and have all the things, and or the partner where she has her own set of ideals, right? So you're really being faced with like, you have a reality check there. What I thought I believed, is that what I still believe with where we're at right now? If I believe that we're both fighting for the same thing or on the same team, that makes it a lot easier for sure. And also knowing that this phase is also messy, right? It doesn't have to be as messy, but it's still messy because we're repatterning. We're setting new grooves in the brain, and we're establishing new ways of being as a couple. And it's different. It's something we haven't done before. And so you don't want to go backwards. And so moving forward, we're going to be honest and open and real and transparent. And that scares the hell out of us because we don't want to get hurt again. And so to stay in the game is half the battle there. Like if I can just stay present and I can stay attuned to myself, if I can, as a partner, keep my feet on the ground and know that right now I'm safe. Right now he's in the room with me. Right now he's not acting out. Right now he is in recovery. Right now he is seeing a therapist. Right now I have support. Right now we're seeing couples. We're in couples therapy work, and we're now having to learn these tools to implement. And yeah, it seems so psychology. You know what I mean? Like all the jargon is completely different than what we're used to. And it's like I always tell the husband, like, get over it. Like, yeah, this is what she's learning. And this is actually helping her stay grounded, which will help you too. When she's not feeling grounded, when she's unregulated, you're liable to get attacked and called names again. And for your sake and hers, we just have to like work with each other. And this is not easy.
No.
Because we got ego that's coming up. Our parts come up, right? If you're one who ascribes to attachment theory, it's like you've got the avoiders and the insecure attachments. And, the secure attachments are usually based in like, I know I'm being cared for. I know I'm being considered. I know I have resources, inner resources and exterior resources. And I'm not putting all my eggs in you. And so I would love to do life with you, alongside you, but you are you and I am me. And how can we create this life together? That's where I think beautiful things can come. And it takes as long as it takes,
You nailed it. That's what I would tell, because it is like, you're going to forever be a cheater. I know that sucks, but like her brain just knows that you have cheated before. And so you guys need to develop a relationship where she knows that that was something that has happened, and you guys are going to figure out how to navigate that. And then vice versa, you're with somebody who can't blindly trust you again, and will probably likely have these triggering moments for the foreseeable future. And so I think you nailed it. It's how do we develop a relationship there? Because like everybody does this, we get with people with flaws and character that, all the time, and we find a way. And sexual betrayal is no different. It's bigger, it's uglier, it's more complex. No question about it. You definitely need professional help because no one can do this with their own intuition. But at the same time, I'll just say this to all the people listening. There's a way you can be with somebody who's made mistakes, and you can find a way forward. Dani, if people are going to get a hold of you, how do they find you? Do you work with men, women, couples? Talk to us a bit about where we can find you and who you work with.
So it's easy to find me. It's my name, DaniMPeterson.com. And that's how you can find me on social media as well. And I do free consultations. I work with the partners, mostly the women, just helping them kind of reestablish safety and security and be able to find their voice again. and be able to stand up for themselves, be self-advocate, and practice self-agency and all of that. And I do work with the couples too when they get to that stage. I don't specialize in the compulsive behaviors and addiction side, but I sometimes help them through the the disclosure piece, because there's like this whole community that comes together. So I'm working with the therapist, and then sometimes I do personally like to meet with the husband, because I want him to know, like, look, I'm on your guys' team. I'm not just in her camp and you're the bad guy. I want him to know that, like, I really want to see you guys do well. And, I preview a lot of the things for them from a partner standpoint. Like, yeah, this sounds a little gaslighty. And, if you can just own this piece. And that was the other thing, is just own. Yeah, I've been a total a-hole. You're right. I have done that. Like, if just even owning it
Right.
will actually calm someone's nervous system
Right.
down.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
And
And it's a
like,
lot easier to do that in a therapeutic container. Yeah, it
yeah.
is. It
And,
is.
and your
Absolutely.
wife, you said too, she's like, I feel like I'm acting crazy.
Right.
But she's owning it. And it's like, I am acting crazy. And I can only imagine what it's like to view this. And so I kind of work with the couples on just um, being a we, working on the us, reestablishing new ground rules. I hate using the word rules, but like,
Healthy boundary
terms
set.
of engagement.
Yep.
Like, how are we going to engage and stay connected? Because all of this comes down to a disconnect in relationship. And how do we reestablish connection? And how do we do it safely and soundly and in a way that remembers shared humanity? That was one of the things. And believe me, I could have said a lot of horrible things about my first husband, but it was also the father of my kids.
Yeah. True that.
And so I had to realize too, and I'm a faith-based practitioner as well. I don't believe that God makes horrible people. And so I come from that standpoint too.
Yeah. So there's a way to get back. There's something
Yeah.
pure to get back to.
Yeah.
I
And I
love
work
that.
holistically as well. So I'm a coach and holistic
And
practitioner.
free
So
consults, you said as well. Free. Oh, that's awesome. So yeah, I'll put the link to that in the show notes for those that want to take advantage of that. Now we get to meet Dani before you guys get to trust her with the most important thing. Well, Dani, this was so great. I appreciate you coming on. This was wonderful. Thank you for sharing all your knowledge with the audience.
yeah, thank you for having me.